everyone, and thank you for joining us for another episode of Mac and Chat. It's been a while, but it's good to see everybody out there. I am so looking forward to tonight's chat. We have a wonderful guest with us, an award-winning author. One of her favorite subjects in the whole wide world is one of my favorite subjects in the whole wide world. The brilliant masterpiece, David O. Selznick's 1939 masterpiece, the film Gone with the Wind. And our guest is Pauline Bartel. She has written 1939 Day by Day, Gone with the Wind, her newest book, and we're going to talk about that in just a minute. Stay tuned. Welcome back, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight. I'm really excited about tonight's chat and our very special guest. This has got to be one of the most celebrated films in all of movie history. 1939 was a great year for movies. Right now, I'm in New York City on the Upper West Side, and 80 somewhat years ago, Judy Garland and Mickey Rooney were in Manhattan to promote one of MGM's biggest movies, The Wizard of Oz, over at the Capitol Theater, not too far from here. But there was another movie that was gearing up for its big premiere just a few months down the road. This was, if pearls are caused by irritation, then Gone with the Wind is a necklace, at least 3 strands. So without further ado, let's bring in my special guest for tonight, the author of Gone with the Wind, 1939 Day by Day, Pauline Bartel. Hello, Pauline.
Hello, Peter. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
I'm thrilled to be with you.
Now, I want to know, just at the start, how did you come to discover Gone with the Wind? What was your first viewing like? Who took you to see it? Did you see it on television? Did you see it in the movies? And was it love at first watch?
Oh, what a great question. I have to attribute my love of Gone with the Wind to my mother. This was back in 1968, and my mother saw in our hometown paper that Gone with the Wind was playing at a local theater. And she said to me, "We must see this film." Now, picture this, Peter. I'm a teenager. It's a snowy vacation from school. I have no idea what the plot of this movie is. I don't know who any of the players are. And I thought spending 4 hours in a theater was a colossal waste of time. But my mother was clever, and she really wanted to see this film. I was just learning to drive. And my mother said, "If you go to see this movie with me, I will let you drive to the theater." So who could resist an offer like that?
Sure.
We get to the theater, I drive us to the theater. Now, back in those days, it was a theater in a strip mall. It wasn't one of these multiplexes. And today, typically, if you're going to a blockbuster movie, there are lines around the block. In this instance, there was a line around the block at the parking lot. And my sense was, oh, this must be something really really special. There were so many people wanting to see this film. So we inched our way up to the box office, and I noticed what I subsequently learned was called the Flaming Embrace poster. And I asked my mother, who are they in the film? And she said, well, you will find out. Well, find out I did. We went into the theater. The curtains parted. Max Steiner's lovely music rose up in the auditorium. Of course, I didn't know Max Steiner at that point. And I mesmerized by Vivian. I fell in love with part at the foot of the 12-oak staircase, and that did it for me. By the end of that movie, it was 2 years and in love with the story. The very next day, I decided I want to find all the information I can about Gone with the Wind, the stars, the making of the film. So I started collecting information. This happened over a period of like 3 or 4 years. I then go to college. I become a professional writer. And I recognized and realized that Gone with the Wind, the film's 50th anniversary was coming up in 1989. And I decided to write a love letter to Gone with the Wind, and that love letter became my first Gone with the Wind book, my second book in total, the complete Gone with the Wind trivia book. Now, this book was a passport to Atlanta, Georgia for me, because my publisher sent me to Atlanta. I was doing an author's tour. And, Peter, after my mother had taken me to that theater, my goal was to one day visit Atlanta. That was my life's goal. So here I was in Atlanta, but I wasn't just there as a tourist. I was there as an author on tour. I was part of all of the festivities for that 50th anniversary. I got to meet the remaining cast members, which included Rand Brooks, who played Charles Hamilton, Scarlett's first husband. I met Fred Crane, who played Brent Tarleton, one of the Tarleton twins on the front porch at Tara. I met Evelyn Keyes, who played Sue Ellen O'Hara. I met Butterfly McQueen, who played Prissy. I met Anne Rutherford, who played Karine. I even met Daniel Selznick, the son of the producer. I was in heaven. I was absolutely in heaven. I was also in the theater on December 15th, 1989 for Gone with the Wind's re-premiere, and it was exactly 50 years from the time it premiered in Atlanta. So from my mother insisting that we must see this movie, and a very reluctant teenage daughter agreeing to go because I got to drive the car, Gone with the Wind became a lifelong obsession for me. That continues to this day.
Well, and it's paid off because this is your second Gone with the Wind book, 1939 Day by Day.
Yes, and then for the 75th anniversary, I updated the original trivia book, and this was published in honor of the 75th anniversary of the film. I also did a book of Gone with the Wind collectibles. That is no longer in print, but that was a lovely book that I wrote. So actually, the current book is my fourth Gone with the Wind book.
All right. So yeah, it's definitely beyond. It's safe to say you'll love it. You'll love it. How soon after you saw the movie did you immediately go to read the book, or did you kind of hesitate?
Excellent question. And I have a theory about one's favorite type of Gone with the Wind, whether you like the film or whether you like the novel. My first experience with Gone with the Wind was seeing it in the theater. I had not read the book. So my theory that I've been testing all these 25 years has been, which form were you first exposed to, and is it your favorite? So I eventually read the novel, which I do love, but I love the film. The film has my heart.
Which almost seems to be the consensus in Gone with the Wind groups. It's, and I'm sure there are diehards of, well, I know there are because I see the conversations about the book, and then Scarlett and Rhett Butler's people. I think that's the because we've had about three or four follow-ups.
Yes. Well, Peter, here's an interesting fact. If David O. Selznick, the producer, had filmed Gone with the Wind as Margaret Mitchell wrote it without cutting anything, we would be seeing a film for 168 hours. We'd have to view it 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, and people complain that 4 hours is long enough. So Selznick was a genius in that he and the writers he worked with, which was a whole other story, were very clever in giving viewers the impression they had seen the whole story as Mitchell had written it, but they didn't.
They didn't.
It was severely condensed.
And admittedly, I have to say this to the people watching. I am one of those. I've never read the book. I've bought copies over the years. And I have a dear friend from the South who I lost a couple of months ago. She loved the movie, she loved the book, and she was so anxious for me to read it. And I said, if I'm going to invest in this, I need the large print edition, which is impossible to find. If you do find it, and I found someone who didn't know what they had. And I promised Galen, I know you're watching up there somewhere, Galen, this is going to be the year we're going to delve in and see what it's really all about, because I'm anxious. I know that they had to, hybrid some characters and eliminate some plot points. Scarlett has more children. Does Karine become a nun? Isn't that part of the? I think one of the sisters, I believe, someone becomes a nun.
Yes, that's Karine, played by Anne Rutherford.
By Anne Rutherford.
And she was Mickey Rooney's girlfriend in the Andy Hardy movies.
That's correct. And I know, keep me honest on this, I'm told that Judy, as in Miss Garland, was on the short list to possibly play Karine, which doesn't seem like it would have been out of left field.
I'm not sure about that. Because as you know, she was involved with The Wizard of Oz.
Yes, which was going at the same time.
Yes.
And I know with what was the projected filming schedule? Because with Oz, it was supposed to be 5 to 6 weeks at the most, and it went 7 months. Now, was Gone with the Wind the same kind of deal there? Because just the search for Scarlett alone took.
Well, the search for Scarlett, there was a reason for that. But to answer your question about the actual production started on January 26, 1939, and it officially ended on June 27th. But the last scene of Gone with the Wind was actually filmed on November 11th, 1939. Selznick needed a filler scene, and it's the one in which the Gettysburg casualty lists have been announced. They're outside, they're at the Examiner building, and it's a very poignant scene where an older woman is clutching the casualty list. She is crying. She approaches her husband, who is an older band leader. And just the exchange of glances tells the band leader that they have lost a loved one, whether it's a son or a grandson, at Gettysburg. So he straightens his back, he turns to his musicians, he raises his baton, and he leads the group in playing Dixie. That was the last official scene, and that was filmed on November 11th, 1939.
So we went quite a ways.
Yes.
Yeah, in terms of it, it's amazing to me between Oz and Gone with the Wind. I mean, they really put their all, and it's paid off because both films are timeless.
Yes. And you probably know that Victor Fleming was the director on The Wizard of Oz, and after the first director on Gone with the Wind, George Cukor, was fired, MGM pulled some strings, Selznick pulled some strings at MGM and got Victor Fleming, who had been manic with Munchkins, to take on the troubled Gone with production. No wonder he collapsed shortly after taking on the job.
I was going to read. It's interesting. Our friends William Stillman and Jay Scarfoni they've written several Oz books, the same way you with Gone with the Wind. The latest one, The Road to Oz, they talk about his last day on the set, and they were getting ready to film the cyclone scenes. And because they knew he was going to Gone with the Wind, they turned the wind machines on and said, "We're going to blow you over to Tara."
That's funny.
Yeah. But he did have, well, almost everybody on this film seemed to have a nervous breakdown at some point.
Yes. And poor Mr. Selznick, he, toward the end, was using Benzedrine to be energized and taking sleeping pills to relax at night. Was down with nervous. And poor Vivien Leigh, she was pushing herself because she wanted to see this film end. She was very unhappy with Victor Fleming, especially when he announced the cast and crew. I'm going to make this picture a melodrama. And Vivien Leigh just saw the worth of Gone with the Wind. She saw that he was not the right director for her. He would give her non-helpful advice. She would go to him and say, "How should I play this scene?" And his response was, "Just ham it up." So he had a completely different view of how this film should be blocked and shot and edited than Vivien Leigh did, which was why they had a very tumultuous relationship.
Sure.
And in fact, they were filming the scene, and you probably remember, Peter, it's outside the Atlanta hospital. It's at night, and Belle Watling, Rhett's mistress, drives up in a carriage. She wants to donate money to the hospital, and there's interaction. She's trying to talk to Melanie. And it was while they were shooting that scene that Victor Fleming wanted Scarlett to show great scorn to Belle Watling. And Vivien Leigh refused to do it. She said, "You're portraying this woman as just totally horrible, and I won't do it." He was at the end of his rope. This was around the end of April 1939. And he rolled up his script, threw it at her feet, and walked off the set. As he was driving home that night, he was so overwhelmed. He had thoughts of driving his car over an embankment.
Oh, gosh.
Subsequent to that, his doctor ordered him to have complete bed rest until further notice. Now, that left Selznick in quite a bind. Selznick knew that Victor Fleming was at the breaking point. So he was very clever in going back to MGM and saying, "I think I might have to replace Fleming. Do you have a director that can help me?" So they tapped Sam Wood. Sam Wood had just finished directing Goodbye, Mr. Chips. So he was at large. He was a contract director. And the very night that Victor Fleming stormed off the set, having thrown the script at Vivien Leigh, Selznick put a call into Sam Wood, and within an hour, Sam Wood was on the set being briefed by Selznick, and he picked up directing the scene with Melanie, Scarlett, and Belle Watling at that Atlanta hospital. So he didn't miss a beat. He got in and started directing.
Just kept going. It's been said that Olivia and Vivien, because they were so upset that George Cukor was no longer on the scene, would go to him for advice.
Yes, that is true. They were separately going to Cukor for character development.
Yeah.
And Olivia felt kind of guilty that she was going behind Vivien Leigh's back, and she admitted it. She said, "Well, I'm visiting George Cukor and he's helping me with my character development." And Vivien Leigh said, "No need to feel guilty. I'm doing the same thing." So he ghost directed their performance throughout the picture. So Cukor had his hand in the directing, even though he was not the official director.
Yeah. And there's no doubt about it. You needed someone like George Cukor. I mean, he was the one who went in and said, "Get all of that gook off of Judy's face and get that ridiculous blonde wig off of her." And she said, "He gave me the best direction in the world. You're just a little girl from Kansas."
Yes.
The man was Amazing.
Now, the reason that Selznick and Cukor, now let me give you the context. When Selznick acquired the rights to Margaret Mitchell's novel, it was in 1936,
Right.
he realized that he would not be able to even bring Gone with the Wind to the screen until 1939. And you may ask, well, why is that? The picture was going to be distributed through Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, but Selznick currently had a contract with United Artists to distribute his films to the end of 1938. Then that contract would be up for renewal, so he would be able to then have Gone with the Wind released by MGM. So Selznick was brilliant. He needed a way to keep the public's attention on Gone with the Wind for the time period it was going to take him to have the script written and fulfill his contract with the United Artists and then begin filming Gone with the Wind. That's why he launched the search for Scarlet. And he dispatched talent scouts to the four corners of the United States with the idea of trying to find a shop clerk or a waitress who had dreams of being Scarlett O'Hara. They actually did find some players. They found George Reeves, who was one of the Tarletons. They also found Alicia Rhett, who played India Wilkes. So there were people that came out of these talent scouting exhibitions or expeditions, but they did not find Scarlett. Selznick knew he would be finding his Scarlett within the Hollywood firmament. And there's the real story and then the Hollywood story.
I was going to, because there's a couple of ladies who I admire greatly. Well, the first is Betty Davis, that it belonged to Jack Warner, and he said, "Please, Betty, don't go away. I've just whoops. I think did we go out? My monitor went out. I don't know if anyone.
I'm still here.
You're still here. Let's see. Let me see. My monitor just went kaput.
Oh dear.
Let's see. Hang on a second, guys.
You're still on camera.
I'm still on camera, right? I'll just keep looking into the camera then.
Betty
Davis was considered.
Yes, Jack Warner, who was the head of Warner Brothers, wanted to team Betty Davis as Scarlett with Errol Flynn as Rhett.
Right.
And Betty Davis was having none of that. She did not want to act with Errol Flynn. Even Olivia de Havilland, she was getting tired of playing the damsel in distress to Errol Flynn. And that's why her role in Gone with the Wind was so pivotal for her career, because it got her out of those stereotypical roles and into a role that she could really sink her teeth into and show the fine dramatic actress that it was at that time, and in my view remains to this day.
Sure. And Katharine Hepburn is as well has on the Dick Cavett show said she was that George. Well, they wanted her to test, and she refused to test for it.
And actually, there's a funny story about Katharine Hepburn. She was in Selznick's office, and they were talking about the role. And he was very direct. He said, I can't see Rhett Butler chasing you for 10 years. Ouch! What a thing to say.
That's great. I've never heard that. That's great.
Spencer Tracy would probably have something to say about that.
I'm sure he would. Oh, gosh. Yeah. So at least we know they were in the running for the part. The screen tests, I mean, those are a movie in and of themselves. And it's interesting in watching them because I really like Paulette Goddard, and they seem to really put her through her paces.
Oh, yes. Paulette was such a gorgeous actress. There was an issue with Paulette that you have to be aware of. At that time, she was starring in the role of the third Mrs. Charlie Chaplin, but the talk in Hollywood was that they were not really married. And we're talking, Peter, about 1939, where the mores were very different from the mores of today, where people live together today. Back in those days, that was considered taboo.
Yes.
So, funny story about Paulette. And Selznick had her under contract. I think it was a 2 or 3 year contract. She needed some acting coaching. And at the point at which he needed to make a decision about who would be his Scarlet, he went to Paulette and said, Paulette, I love you. I think you could do a very good job with this role, but Charlie Chaplin, I need to see a marriage license. Because if you are unmarried, we are going to be in a lot of trouble. And there was a lot of money riding on this film. So Paulette indicated to Selznick that they had been married aboard a yacht that had been attacked by pirates. The pirates set fire to the yacht. Unfortunately, all the paperwork on the yacht was burned up in the conflagration, so she had no marriage license to present to prove that she and Chaplin were married. And then, so of course, the role did not go to her.
Right.
And then there were rumors that they actually had to go away to Mexico to get married to be able to go to Reno to get divorced. So, for want of a piece of paper, Paulette Goddard could have been Scarlet.
Because she could have, yeah, because I thought her tests were wonderful.
I did too, yes.
Yeah. And another one of my favorite actresses.
A lot of those tests are on YouTube.
Yes. Yeah, you can, for anyone watching, go on YouTube. You'll have a Gone with the Wind field day. There's just so much at your disposal. Another one of my favorite actresses, Joan Bennett. And
yes.
I got to meet her at her last Dark Shadows convention. Although she was infirm and in a wheelchair, she was sharp as a tack. And someone, this was 1990, June of 1990, and she was asked by someone, they said, we saw your tests for Gone with the Wind, and we thought you would have made a great Scarlet. And she said, well, George and I were pretty good friends. And she said, I thought I had a fighting chance at it if only Vivien Leigh had just stayed away. But she was joking about it. She was a very classy lady. But I enjoyed seeing her screen test as well.
Yes, she was a beautiful, beautiful actress. Loved her in Father of the Bride.
Scarlet Street, Woman in the Window. I mean, she's another very underrated at the time. Now, of course, the other pivotal role, we mentioned Errol Flynn, was Rhett Butler. And we can't imagine anybody but Clark Gable playing the part. Even Bette Davis said that in it, but he didn't want to play the part for a variety of reasons.
Yes. Believe it or not, Peter, Clark Gable was a very insecure actor, which I find hard to believe.
Yeah.
Now, he knew that George Cukor, who in that time period was used to directing women in women's roles, in women's pictures. And in fact, as a consolation prize for being fired from Gone with the Wind, David O. Selznick gave him The Women, which also came out in 1939, which, to my amazement, was never nominated for anything during that year. But I digress. So Gable was more used to the Victor Fleming type director, somebody who would direct him in men's action films. And also, Victor Fleming and Clark Gable were friends in real life. They rode motorcycles together. They went out drinking. They went out carousing. And Victor Fleming had directed Clark Gable in The Test Pilot and Red Dust. So they had not only a professional relationship, but also a personal relationship. So George Cukor was a strike against Gable. Another strike against Gable was a film he had made a couple of years before called Perennial, which was a historical costume drama. It bombed at the box office. So Gable is thinking, another costume drama, another historical picture, a director who's not going to understand me. So that was strike number 2. Strike number 3, even though Rhett Butler is a prominent role, the star of that film is Vivien Leigh. And Gable was thinking, that's strike 3. The director is going to be putting his attention on Vivien Leigh, and I'm going to be out in the cold. So he told Louis B. Mayer, his boss at MGM, I will not do this role for love or money. But you know what, Peter? Gable at this point was married to his second wife, but he was carrying on a love affair, very visible in Hollywood, with actress comedian Carole Lombard. And they wished to marry. And Because Louis B. Mayer had turned down buying the rights to Margaret Mitchell's novel. He still wanted to get his paws into Gone with the Wind in some way, shape, or form. Now, you probably know Louis B. Mayer was David O. Selznick's father-in-law. Selznick was married to Irene Selznick, or Irene Mayer Selznick. And you would think that having a relationship with your father-in-law would make making a deal for Rhett Butler very easy, but no, it didn't. So behind the scenes, what Louis B. Mayer did was he went to the second Mrs. Gable, because now rumors were swirling that Clark Gable wanted a divorce. He went to Mrs. Gable, the second Mrs. Gable, and said, Rhea, I write Clark's paychecks. I know how much he makes. And what I'm reading in the trades is that you're not getting all you can out of him money-wise. So I encourage you to really ask for the sky's the limit. In the meantime, he went to Gable and said, Clark, I know Rhea is trying to put you through the ringer. She's increased the amount of money she wants from you. Tell you what I'm going to do. If you take on the role of Rhett Butler, I'll give you a $100,000 bonus, which would help you finance your divorce. So he's playing both sides against the middle. So the man who said, Clark Gable, he would not do Gone with the Wind for love or money, in the end did it for both.
For both.
For both.
And it paid off, because it's true. You just can't imagine anybody else playing that part. It's the same with Vivian. I mean, after that long search and all of their screen tests, was it Christmas? Was it Christmas Day, or it was in December? She was brought onto the set?
It was Christmas Day, 1938, when she was at a party at George Cukor's home, when he told her that she had gotten the role. And he said, I think his words were, I guess we're stuck with you. But her revelation as Scarlett actually happened on December 10th, 1938. So even though my book takes place in 1939, there was a lot going on in Gone with the Wind world the year before.
Right.
So let me tell you briefly about what happened on December 10th, 1938. David O. Selznick had plans to shoot Gone with the Wind on the back lot of Selznick International Pictures. And on the back lot were many old sets from like King Kong. And I guess after movies were made, they just dismantled the sets and then threw them on the back lot for either reuse or some other use. So he had the set from King Kong and Garden of All, a lot of other sets. So one of the most magnificent scenes in Gone with the Wind is the fire sequence when Rhett and Scarlett are trying to get out of Atlanta, and the troops have set fire to the munitions at the Atlanta depot. So what Selznick decided to do on December 10th was to reconstruct those old sets to resemble the warehouse section in Atlanta. They threaded pipes filled with oil throughout the sets, ignited the oil, and that's what resulted in the conflagration in Atlanta. They had, I believe it was 4 Technicolor cameras, the only 4 available in Hollywood at that time, were all 4 were filming that, because it was a one take is going to have to do it. That night, Vivian Leigh, in a beautiful black mink coat and a black picture hat, appears on the set before Atlanta becomes an inferno. With her is a handsome man, turns out to be Laurence Olivier. And Mr. Kurtz was the historical advisor, asked Marcella Rabwin, who was David O. Selznick's executive assistant, well, who were those 2 individuals? They were trying to act conspicuously, but how can you be conspicuous if you look like Vivian Leigh and Laurence Olivier? So Marcella Rabwin whispered to Mr. Kurtz, oh, she's a Scarlett that Mr. Selznick is considering. So in the flames of Atlanta, a phoenix rose, and that phoenix was Vivian Leigh, who was subsequently hired by David O. Selznick to be his Scarlett, and that announcement was made on January 13th, 1939.
again, just I guess the way the stars aligned, you just
Yes.
can't picture anybody else. Although I know it seems that the South was rooting for Tallulah Bankhead, and when it was initially announced that the movie was going to be made, and I'm a huge Tallulah fan. I even though I can't picture anybody else playing it, I think Tallulah could have pulled it off.
You think so?
I do. I
I
do.
I'm not too familiar with her films. I'll confess to that.
Sadly she didn't. She had a wonderful theater career, and Betty Davis got almost all the films.
Uh-huh.
Everything that she did on Broadway, they always bought for Betty Davis. But I do believe that she could have pulled it off. I think so many people know Tallulah in her older and later years, where she was kind of parodying herself and doing a satire on herself. But back in the day, I think she could have pulled it off. But again,
Well, here's a cute little anecdote about Tallulah Bankhead. She was asked about taking on the role of Scarlett, and she said words to the effect, they would have to rewrite the script because I would want to carry Clark Gable up the stairs of the Atlanta home.
sounds like Tallulah.
It does. Now, it's very interesting when Vivien Leigh was announced as Scarlett, their newspapers and radio covered it. It was like wall to wall coverage. And a Gallup poll shortly afterward checked in with the American people about how they felt about Vivien Leigh being named as Scarlett. And if I recall correctly, 35% were in favor of her selection, 16% disapproved, and 29% hadn't heard the news, 20% were undecided. But it unleashed a firestorm of people who just rejected a British actress playing the quintessential Southern belle.
Yeah.
One of the organizations that was opposed to Vivien Leigh was the Florida Daughters of the Confederacy, and they threatened to boycott the film. Southern Gentlemen wrote letters to the editor decrying Vivien Leigh as Scarlett. And other people wrote that having an English woman play this role was an insult to Southern womanhood. Now, that was the initial reaction. As time went on, as the production went on in 1939, attitudes changed. Here's how they changed. At the August 1939 convention of the Confederate Memorial Association, this is a women's patriotic group associated with the United Confederate Veterans, they passed a resolution praising David O. Selznick for adhering faithfully to the time, to the era. Also, in I believe it was later that month, David O. Selznick actually received that resolution in his office, praising him for just the wonderful work that he did. Those delegates at that convention had previously been invited to the set to see how Selznick was filming the film, and they were absolutely enthralled. Also, after the film debuted, many critics said that Vivien Leigh was Scarlett O'Hara. And the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, those members obviously agreed because in the 1940 Academy Award ceremony, Vivien Leigh was given Best Actress.
Best Actress. One of 10 Oscars. The film won 10 Oscars altogether.
The film won 8 competitive Oscars and 2 honorary Oscars.
Two honorary
The
Oscars.
honorary Oscars were for William Cameron Menzies for the extraordinary use of color in the Technicolor production, and David O. Selznick was given the Irving Thalberg Award.
Right.
So 8 competitive, 9 honorary.
Now, there were some, we had Clark and his thing going on, but two of the others, there were some hot and heavy love affairs going on during the filming of the movie with two of the other.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I shared with you what was going on with Clark Gable, Rhea Gable, his second wife, and Carol Lombard. They subsequently, the divorce came through, And they subsequently married, I believe it was March 29th, 1939. Gable had a couple of days off from filming Gone with the Wind, and they eloped to Nevada. So we took care of Gable and Lombard. Now, Vivien Leigh was a whole other issue. She's the star of the film. She's a British actress, and she's having a love affair with Laurence Olivier.
Right.
Now, both of them were married to other people. Each marriage had a child, a young child. So here we are, 1939, and you're talking about extramarital affair. And Selznick was pulling his hair out because he felt if this gets out to the public could just turn their backs completely on this film. And there was so much riding on this, he could not take that chance. He was very clever. His brother Myron was a Hollywood agent, and he represented Laurence Olivier. So I don't know exactly what the brothers were talking about that day, but somehow Laurence Olivier was finishing work on Wuthering Heights with Merle Oberon, and then he would be at Liberty. This is April 1939. So somehow Myron got him a role on Broadway with Catherine Cornell production, No Time for Comedy. So that got Olivier out of town. And prior to that, they had been living together in Beverly Hills, and Selznick every single day was like sweating bullets that the reporters would find out where this love nest was. So Olivier's off the scene. They couldn't really marry because their spouses were opposed to dissolving their respective marriages. On December 16th, 1939, the day after the Atlanta premiere, Vivien Leigh announced their engagement, and they married at the end of August in 1940. So we took care of Gable and Lombard. We took care of Laurence Olivier and Vivien Leigh. So let's talk a little bit about Leslie Howard. Leslie Howard played Ashley.
Yes.
Now, in Hollywood, it was known that Leslie Howard was married and he had children, and they were living in England. In Beverly Hills, Leslie Howard had a beautiful home, and he also had a beautiful companion living with him, Violet Cunningham. Now, she was billed as his secretary, billed as his production assistant, and everybody knew, they could read between the lines or between the air quotes, and they could figure out that something a little deeper was going on. So, and he was a ladies' man known throughout Hollywood. Many, many beautiful Hollywood stars bedded with Leslie Howard. I won't name names now, but he was quite the character. So then that leaves us Olivia de Havilland. Olivia de Havilland was the only single individual of the four major stars. She was dating, ready for this, Howard Hughes, the aviator. And he was sending her flowers 3 times a week, taking her out to parties. And he proposed marriage. But the caveat was this: he wouldn't marry her until he turned 50, which would be 17 years in the future. But as soon as she accepted his proposal, he demanded that she terminate her acting career. So she wasn't going to have any of that. So she declined the marriage proposal, but they remained friends and they dated on and off until I think it was June 1939, she and Howard were at a party. Her sister Joan Fontaine was also there. And Howard Hughes spontaneously proposed marriage to Joan Fontaine. And Olivia stormed out, and that was the end of the relationship with Olivia de Havilland and Howard Hughes.
And added a little bit of fodder with her sister, I'm sure.
I guess the rule is, do not propose marriage to the sister of the woman that you hope will marry you. I think that's a good rule for all of us.
I totally agree. Well, since we're talking about torrid love affairs, we've got to at least show a clip from the film, because this is what gets the whole ball rolling, so to speak, with this great love triangle that Margaret Mitchell so brilliantly created in the novel and as we see in the film. So let's roll that clip.
Why didn't you say it, you coward? You're afraid to marry me. You'd rather live with that silly little fool who can't open her mouth except say yes, no, and raise a passel of mealy-mouthed breath just like her.
You mustn't say things like that about Malin.
Who are you to tell me I mustn't? You led me on. You made me believe you wanted to marry me.
Now, Scarlett, be fair. I never at any time...
You did. It's true you did. I hate you till I die. I can't think of anything bad enough to call you.
Has the war started?
Sir, you should have made your presence known.
In the middle of that beautiful love scene? That wouldn't have been very tactful, would it? But don't worry. Your secret is safe with me.
Sir, you are no gentleman.
And you, miss, are no lady.
Oh.
But don't think that I hold that against you. Ladies have never held any charm for me.
First you take a low, common advantage of me. Then you insult me.
I meant it as a compliment. And I hope to see more of you when you're free of the spell of the elegant Mr. Wilkes. He doesn't strike me as half good enough for a girl of your... what was it? Your passion for living?
How dare you? You aren't fit to wipe his boot.
And you were going to hate him for the rest of your life.
I love that scene.
Oh, it's a great scene. It's a great scene. And I think someone salvaged that broken piece of ceramics that she throws, that someone actually has pieces of that in their collection.
That could be.
Yeah, that someone on the set decided to save it.
Now, with Vivien Leigh's throw, the first time she threw that vase, it just didn't hit that mantelpiece at all. So they had to do another take. Another one hit it, but Gable blew his line. He was a little too slow getting up from the couch. So I think it was several takes before they finally got it right, that she threw it, it hit its object, and then Gable got up at the right time. So that was a little tricky.
Yeah. Now, one of the performers that holds the story together, certainly holds the movie together, is the great Hattie McDaniel. I mean,
yes,
the character of Mammy is just so essential to the story, and it's obviously in the last several years there's been so much controversy about the movie because times are changing and we're trying to move forward, but I was a little upset. I was more than a little upset when there were these kind of protests that the movie should be destroyed and should never be shown again. And I really liked what Whoopi Goldberg, one of my favorite performers, had to say about it, which was, you can't destroy these films. It's a commentary on the times. You've got to put everything into the context of its time. You can open a dialogue with it. And yes, definitely put a chyron, an explanation that this is a fantasy. I mean, it's like Downton Abbey, which I've become a huge fan of. The stars will often be asked by the fans, like, wouldn't you like to live in those times? And they're like, well, not really. What we're doing is a romantic version of what it was like, but that's not what it was like. And you have to think of it in that way. So,
yes.
You're not... I'd hate to know anybody that would endorse slavery or try to make it look like it was a thrilling time for anybody. But to say, let's destroy the film, I don't agree with that either.
I agree with your position on that because I don't agree with destroying the film either. I think it's helpful to think about what Gone with the Wind really is. Gone with the Wind does not deal with slavery. It uses the Civil War and slavery as the background, but it is in essence a romance. It is a story of survival through a tumultuous time in our American history. So I prefer to pay attention to the romance, the theme of survival that threads itself through Gone with the Wind.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I like, it was a quote Marcella Rabwin had, which was, one of the studio executives balked and said, who who's going to want to go see this? It's just a story about a bitch and a bastard. As it turns out, everybody wanted to go see it.
And everybody wants to see it today.
And everybody wants to see it today.
Yes. And Turner Classic Movies is going to be showing Gone with the Wind on August 26th as part of their Summer Under the Stars. And prior to the the film showing at 8:00, there will be the documentary, The Making of Gone with the Wind. So Turner Classic Movies has brought it back, which I am very happy to see. And I will be tuned in on August 26th to see Gone with the Wind for the umpteenth time. I've lost count, Peter.
I'm sure. I've seen it now. Just watching that clip, because I haven't watched the movie in so long. Now I need to sit down and watch it again. I've never had the good fortune of seeing it on the big screen. I would love to see it on the big screen at some point. I've never had that good fortune, but I'd love to. I'd love to have the opportunity at some point to see it on the big screen. And just getting back to Hattie for a moment. What a performance! What a performance! And I think she's a huge part of the backbone of the film and of its success. I mean, obviously, Clark and Vivian and Olivia, and wonderful direction by Cukor and Fleming and company. But God, she's such an important part of the film. And I remember as a little boy saying to my mom, asking her what the deal was with all of that. I didn't quite understand what it was all about. And she explained to me, gave me a perfunctory, lesson in slavery, and I said, it wasn't, a terribly happy time. I said, I think Scarlett loves Mammy, and this was from like a 10-year-old's perspective. And she said, you're right. I think Scarlett loves Mammy too. As a matter of fact, she said, I think she loves Mammy maybe a little bit more than she even loves her own mother. Now that might be debatable, but there was something there inherent in the story. Maybe not so much in real life, the way things went down, but that relationship between the two of them. And I just love the way Hattie zings it to her.
Yes. In my view, Mammy becomes Scarlett's conscience after Ellen O'Hara dies.
Yeah.
And Mammy is Scarlett's link to Tara and the land that gives her strength.
Yeah.
That's why I love Mammy.
Yeah. Now, again, guys, you got to read this book, Gone with the Wind, 1939, Day by Day. A random thing I picked up here. Let me get to this. This is, where are we at? This is Monday, March 13th, in the news. In Florida's Orlando Sentinel, Burger's Tavern advertised an exciting new cocktail. The Scarlett O'Hara has a base of 100 proof Southern Comfort, plus cranberry juice and lime juice. The ad advised that ladies limit themselves to 2, or else they might be gone with the wind. So I love that there's stuff like that in this book. It's wonderful.
Well, thank you. And there was a companion cocktail called the Rhett Butler cocktail. It was also a Southern Comfort beverage. I shared the recipe for that in the Gone with the Wind trivia book. It didn't last long in popularity, and the way I wrote about it in my Gone with the Wind trivia book, it disappeared as quickly as Rhett Butler going back to Charleston.
After a few, you'll say, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
Exactly.
Do you have a favorite moment in the movie? Is there something that really gets you every time you see it?
Yes. Scarlett's oath in the garden. She has come back to Tara. She has found her mother dead, her father having lost his mind in grief, having seen the ravages that the opposing army has inflicted upon Tara. And it's all on Scarlett's back to help her family through this. Her sisters are ill. The house servants are doing the best they can, but everybody's just overwhelmed. And she goes into that garden. I hope I don't start crying. And she stands there and says, as God is my witness, as God as my witness, they won't lick me. I'm going to live through this, and when it's all over, I will never be hungry again, whether I have to lie, steal, cheat, or kill. As God as my witness, I'll never be hungry again.
Yeah. It's so powerful. It's so and it's so brilliantly lit, that scene when she does go in and finds Ellen's body. It's, my God. I mean, just every little last detail. The attention to detail on the film is exquisite.
And if you remember Scarlett finding Ellen's body, the position is similar to when Melanie goes into Rhett's bedroom when Bonnie has passed, when Bonnie was killed in the accident,
Yeah.
that it mirrors the loss of Ellen. There are so many symbolic imageries in that movie. That's why every time I see it, I take away something different.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, as with any classic, you'll find something that you didn't find before.
Yes.
Now, they just officially announced, to my dismay, that Warner's has greenlit a remake of The Wizard of Oz.
Oh, tell me.
Well, I'm not. I wasn't happy when the announcement came out that they were even thinking of it, and now it's been greenlit. And I'll tell you why. And I don't think I'm being a hypocrite saying this. I love the original West Side Story. It's one of my favorite films.
Uh-huh.
But I adored the remake with Steven Spielberg. I thought he did a brilliant job. He stayed true to the original material. They went in and corrected a few things that needed to be corrected, like putting the right actors in the right roles. And Tony Kushner added all of these layers. It was like we found out stuff that made the story make more sense. Things about Tony that gave him more background. And I went in with trepidation, and I went to see the movie 12 times because I just loved it so much. But again, he didn't veer away. He didn't take anything away from what we already know and love. With this Wizard of Oz remake, I hear modernized and reimagined. And I go, oh, we're going down the wrong yellow brick road here. Now, we know that the book is huge, and we talked about how long it would actually be.
Yes.
Do you think that it could or should ever be done trying to remain faithful and tell the entire story? And it couldn't be done as a one-shot movie. It would have to be done as a 2 or 3 year limited series type thing. How would you feel about something like that?
Well, if you remember, I think it was the early 90s when Alexandra Ripley wrote the sequel called Scarlet. And they made a mini series of that, which it was terrible, in my opinion. And if you look at how much it cost back in 1939 to make Gone with the Wind, it was millions of dollars, I think $1.25 million. I just don't think it would be economically feasible today. So I would hate to see, and I think movie producers would have to be very brave or very foolish to undertake a complete remake of Gone with the Wind.
Yeah, I've because I know, again, as we said, there's so much that they have to truncate and leave out. And I thought, well, I think the only way you could do it is you would have to do it as like a series. You couldn't possibly tell it as they couldn't do in 1939.
Right. And if I recall correctly, the miniseries Scarlet was shown over several nights. I'm not sure if they were consecutive. So you are absolutely correct that it would be an enormous production. And I just don't see it being feasible today. I really don't. And I would hate to see it.
It's because there's Oz and Gone with the Wind. Sound of Music. I always label things from classic to iconoclastic. And certainly Oz and Gone with the Wind are iconoclastic.
Yes,
They
I
just,
agree.
it's another realm. It's just another
Yes.
realm. My family tuned in to see Scarlet. In fact, we watched. They had a search for Scarlet Night. I remember that they were doing the whole thing all over again.
Yes.
They announced the movie. We tuned in the first night, and we did not tune in after that.
Well, because of my professional interest in the subject, I was compelled to watch it every night.
Of course.
And it was not, there's no comparison with the original. And even Timothy Dalton, who played Rhett, and Joanne Wally Kilmer, who played Scarlet, they did heroic work on that miniseries. But Peter, what gave me the clue that this was not going to end well was when they announced the Scarlet was going to be made into a motion picture vehicle. And I was expecting that it would be a theatrical release. And if so, I thought, well, that would probably be a good movie to see. But then when I heard it was going to be a TV miniseries, nothing against TV,
Right.
but a lesser production, I thought, oh, that book is in a lot of trouble. I had read the book. Here's an interesting little fact. The year it came out, I think it was 1991, my hip had gone out and I was flat on my back for a week while I was recuperating from a slipped hip. And I don't know what hurt worse, my hip or having to read that book. Having to read the book.
Oh gosh. Well, I've never read the book. I've seen fans say that the miniseries screwed up the book because they changed the ending, and I don't know how it ends. Because I never watched the whole thing, I thought that she was. I think she's a wonderful actress, but she just wasn't right. And I know a lot of us. A lot of us were pulling for Delta Burke because we all felt she had the Vivian Lee thing.
Yes.
And by
Yes.
that point, Delta had gained weight. She was not as svelte as when she went through that whole mishigas. But I thought, if you're going to get anyone, I mean, Suzanne Sugarbaker was almost the modern day Scarlett O'Hara, and I thought
Yes.
that Delta would have been a better choice.
My preference would have been Jane Seymour.
Oh, okay. All right. Great actress.
But Delta would have worked well too, I think.
Yeah. I could totally have seen, and I know Timothy Dalton is a huge heartthrob for some people, but he never rang my chime, so it wasn't my.
I'm with you on that.
I'll tell you who I'd love to see play Clark Gable in a biopic is, oh my God, Gaston in Beauty and the Beast. Luke Evans.
Oh, all right.
He's done a series of kind of 1930s-esque photo shoots, and he's got that mustache.
Uh-huh.
And there's something about the bone structure. Not necessarily in a Gone with the Wind remake, although I'll tell you what I think would be interesting is a behind-the-scenes movie about the making of Gone with the Wind. I know we've got the Scarlet Wars, which is kind of, a little. They don't quite get it all right.
Well, the making of Gone with the Wind, that documentary, gives you that glimpse behind the scenes. So would you be wanting more than that?
Yeah, to see it played out, dramatically. Versus, I love the documentary that Christopher Plummer narrates, but
Yeah.
I think as a 10, 12 part series like Fosse Verdon, and showing all of the troubles that the movie went through, and all the the drama behind that I'd be interested in seeing.
Well, Peter, if
And you could be a consultant.
that would answer your question. that would answer your question.
This is the kind of book that I love to just, again, you skim through this and you find out the most wonderful things, but we don't give it away for free. You have to buy a copy.
And it's available at brick and mortar bookstores. It's available at Amazon.com, on BarnesandNoble.com. So if your bookstore doesn't have it, you have them order it. They will be happy to do so. And if people go to my Amazon.com author page, my email address is there, and you can request an autographed book plate, which I will be happy to send to you.
There you go. There you go. Questions? You said we have questions.
We do. We have quite a few questions.
We have questions.
Some of the questions revolved around things that you talked about already. Now, this comes from Paul Potoff, and Paul wants to know, is it true that Margaret Mitchell had intended to write a sequel or talked about writing a sequel?
Oh, that's an interesting question. David O. Selznick approached Margaret Mitchell about writing a sequel, and she absolutely refused. She said, I left Scarlett and Rhett to their own devices. I don't know what happened to them, and I don't want to know what happened to them. I'm paraphrasing, of course. And he tried to cajole her into writing even a sequel about, this was ridiculous, about Bonnie Blue Butler, who had died in the movie. But somehow he was thinking Margaret Mitchell could resurrect Bonnie Blue Butler. She would have nothing to do with a sequel. Gone with the Wind, if you read biographies about Margaret Mitchell, that book and movie completely upended her life. And in fact, she and her husband, John Marsh, were so consumed with the business of Gone with the Wind that she found no time to do any writing whatsoever after Gone with the Wind. Now, there were found in personal collections some earlier works. Lost Lacin comes to mind that Margaret Mitchell had written, but to my knowledge, nothing substantial was written by Margaret Mitchell after Gone with the Wind. So good question. Thank you for that.
And I just want to throw out there, Paul, if you haven't seen it, there was a wonderful TV movie called Burning Passion, the Margaret Mitchell story, and Shannon Doherty played Margaret. It's wonderful. It shows just what strong acting chops Shannon had. I enjoyed the movie thoroughly, and just from what I've read about Margaret, they seem to get it right. One of the things I also thought was interesting, Pauline, is that she was so hands-off in the making of the movie. Selznick would drive her crazy, apparently, with letters. She said, listen, I sold the movie to you. It's your movie. Don't bother me with it.
Exactly. She didn't want to get involved with the casting. She didn't want to get involved. Selznick wanted her to come out to Hollywood to be like a consultant on the set. She refused to do that. She appeared at the premiere, the Atlanta premiere, and I think even that was overwhelming for her. She was a very shy, retiring person, and all of this Hollywood hullabaloo just was very overwhelming to her.
Yeah. Next question.
So this comes from one of our Alabama friends, Tori Whetstone. Tori says she needs you to settle a bet. Is it true that F. Scott Fitzgerald wrote the original script?
Sidney Howard was a screenwriter that David O. Selznick hired to write the screenplay for Gone with the Wind. Sidney Howard was working on this script from 1936 to 1939. Selznick, ever the perfectionist, was not satisfied with Sidney Howard's work. And Sidney Howard was brilliant. So Selznick brought on a series of writers, including F. Scott Fitzgerald, to work on Gone with the Wind script. But F. Scott Fitzgerald was not on the Selznick lot very long, and Selznick fired him. So although F. Scott Fitzgerald had a part in writing the script, he did not write the script in toto. The screenplay was attributed to Sidney Howard, the playwright.
Who died before the movie premiered, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
And in fact, There were two shocking deaths in connection with Gone with the Wind. The first death occurred in February 1939, an actor called Robert Gleckler. Now, he had been hired as the overseer. Oh, the name is escaping me. Jonas Wilkerson came to me. And he had filmed that initial scene with Mrs. O'Hara where she has come from the bedside of Emmy Slattery and has given birth and the child has died. And Mrs. O'Hara says, I've come from Emmy Slattery's bedside. Your child has been born and mercifully has died. So Gleckler filmed that scene and Selznick was very pleased with it. When the filming shut down after George Cukor was fired, it was, I believe, February 26, 1939. Selznick received word that Gleckler had died at the age of 58 of uremic poisoning. Now, this was a contract actor, but what was even more troublesome to Selznick, Gleckler still had scenes to shoot. He had to shoot the scene of Jonas Wilkerson coming back to Tara as a Yankee, the Scarlet throwing dirt in his face. So he had no choice. He had to excise all of the footage that Gleckler had filmed. He hired Victor Jury to take on the role. They had to reshoot all of those scenes. So that was the first shocking death. The second shocking death took place in August of 1939. Sidney Howard, who had been the screenwriter for Gone with the Wind, had a 700-acre farm in Massachusetts. And Selznick would call him back periodically between January and June to work on the script. And Sidney Howard hated Hollywood. He hated working for Selznick because he was crazy about making that script perfect. So, late August 1939, Sidney Howard was on his farm. He was trying to engage a tractor, and it must have been one of those crank ones. What he didn't realize was that the tractor was the gear was engaged. So when he turned that crank, the tractor engaged and crushed him against a wall of his barn, and his body was found by one of his employees. And that death absolutely shocked everybody on Gone with the Wind set. Fast forward to the 1940 Academy Awards. Sidney Howard was posthumously awarded Best Screenplay at the Academy Awards, and he became the first posthumous awardee from the Academy.
He certainly deserved it.
Yes.
Next question.
So I actually lost the question, but I'll paraphrase it. So Brianna Brown wants to know, in terms of the segregation that existed in Hollywood, off the set, like Hattie McDaniel not being able to be in the room when she got her Oscar, how did the African-American actors and the Caucasian actors, how did they get along on set?
They got along well from the reports that I have researched. Now, Clark Gable has to have some due because the Selznick set was segregated. There was whites only, and there was coloreds only. Well, Hattie McDaniel was a great friend of Clark Gable. She had worked in several films with him, and he would have none of it. So he went to Selznick and he said, you have to make a change with this. This is not right. And if the change is not made, I'm walking.
Wow.
So Selznick desegregated the set because of Clark Gable's belief that that's the way it should have been. And it was. So kudos to Gable.
Because he also threatened not to go to the Atlanta premiere, didn't he? Because Hattie wasn't allowed to go. Was that something that happened as well?
That was part of it, but also around this same time, relations broke off between Selznick and Gable because Selznick was trying to get Gable to do a lot of the promotional work in Atlanta. And he was not only a very insecure actor, he was a very shy person.
Yeah.
And Selznick even said to Kay Brown, who was his representative in Atlanta for the premiere, he's doing us a favor by going. We cannot push him to do anything more than he's going to be comfortable with, or we won't have him at all. So there was tension between Gable and Selznick. Also, Victor Fleming was on the outs with Selznick as well because of all of the, the trials and tribulations that was going on during the filming. Coincidentally, Douglas Fairbanks Sr. died unexpectedly in December 1939, giving Victor Fleming an excuse for not participating in the Atlanta festivities. That was the legitimate reason, or the official reason, but it was because Victor Fleming was just so enraged about how Selznick was just lording it over all of the staff and just meddling in everything. He was a perfectionist, which I can understand, being one myself, but he drove his staff and stars crazy. That was his genius. I guess just making a little quip, you've heard, you have to break some eggs to make an omelet. You've got to crack some skulls to make a masterpiece movie.
Yes.
Sammy DeSocio wants to know, how did they accomplish the fire?
Oh, that fire sequence took place on December 10th, 1938. And Selznick said he was going to film the movie on the back lot, and his back lot was littered with sets from King Kong, Garden of Allah. He had his crew reconstruct all of those sets so that it looked like old Atlanta, the warehouses. He then had his crew thread through the buildings pipes that contained oil. The oil was ignited. The flames rose up, and the 4 Technicolor cameras that were on the scene that night to capture this footage captured that footage. If you can remember the moment in that scene where Gable's wagon is going in front of this huge inflamed wall of fire, that was the gate from King Kong.
And that's also because it's not Gable and Lee inside the carriage. It's their stunt. It's their stunt doubles.
Their stunt doubles. The stunt double for Gable was Yakima Canute, and we see him on the bridge at Shantytown. He was the white man who stopped the carriage. He was a brilliant stuntman, brilliant stuntman. Do you remember, I believe it's the John Wayne movie Stagecoach, also 1939.
Okay.
And there's a scene when I think it's John Wayne, if I have that correct, he's underneath the stagecoach, and the stagecoach is like at full speed. That was Yakima Canute who designed that stunt and actually did that stunt. That was a very dangerous stunt in Stagecoach.
Incredible. And it's also, too, one of the things that I find very, very interesting about Oz and Gone with the Wind and other films of the time is so much of what we see was painted on glass, matte paintings. So, when they walk into 12 Oaks and when they do all of these places, they're really in this tiny little area, and these people worked tirelessly to paint in everything around them. It's and no CGI. It's brilliant.
Well, it's CGI without the camera.
Without the camera.
The person who was responsible for what you're referring to, that's called matte painting,
yes,
was Jack Cosgrove. He was their special effects coordinator. So to give you an example, if you remember early in the movie when Scarlett is going to be hiding in the 12 Oaks library,
yes,
and Ashley, she's run down the hall, and you see a chandelier and you see all the decoration, all of that was painted on glass. And then the technology I'm not familiar with, but it was somehow filmed. So it gave the impression that those fixtures and accoutrements were there, but they were just on glass. It was incredible what they did in 1939.
1939. It's the same thing in the Witch's Castle in Oz when they're chasing and there's the courtyard and there's the moat, and the moat is shining and reflecting the moonlight, and then you see that it's all been painted in by these people that worked 15,
Yes.
16, 17 hours. It's just incredible.
And that was the brilliance of Jack Cosgrove, who was their special effects coordinator.
Yeah.
So one of Peter's fans, who actually is a major movie buff, Marty Morrison, he wants to know, how did they get away with using the word damn in 1939 on film?
Oh, that is some story. Okay, you want to know about damn? I'm going to tell you about damn. I'll tell you about that damn word damn. Now, in Margaret Mitchell's novel, the line is, "My dear, I don't give a damn." And when Selznick acquired the rights to the book, he knew that he was going to have trouble with that word, because at the time there was a motion picture productions code which limited the amount of profanity to actually no profanity, and it included the word damn. So when Selznick was making that particular scene, shooting that particular scene, he shot it two ways. He had Clark Gable say, "My dear, I don't care," which is what Sidney Howard had written in the script. And he also shot it with Gable saying, "I don't give it, my dear, I don't give a damn." Right before that scene was filmed two ways, Selznick actually added the word frankly. "Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. Frankly, my dear, I don't care," because he thought it gave the line an offhanded quality. So he shot it two ways, and then he previewed the film in September 1939 at the Riverside Theater. And the review cards that came back from the members of the audience basically said, "What happened to the line? It's not what I remember from the novel." So that was a piece of evidence that Selznick would be using to appeal to the censor for permission to use that word. So in October 1939, Selznick sent a letter to the association, the Motion Picture Association, and he set his arguments up for why he should be allowed to use damn. He cited the Oxford English Dictionary, which described damn not as an oath or a curse, but as a vulgarism. I'm sure there's a fine line there, but I digress. Next, he also pointed to the general public's exposure to that word in popular magazines of the day, such as Women's Home Companion, Saturday Evening Post. Third, he noted that the preview audience at Riverside had really missed hearing that line, "Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn." Well, the association denied Selznick's request to use damn. He had one more quiver in his backpack, and I'm probably mixing metaphors here. He made a petition to the association's board of directors and lined up support from the directors who were studio bosses, independent producers, and made his case in person at the October 27th, 1939 meeting of the board of directors. Now, if this were a Western, that board of directors meeting could have been characterized as rip-roaring. There were some directors who were totally against Selznick's use of the word, others who were firmly in his court. When the dust settled, the board of directors gave him permission to use damn. It was a hard-fought battle. But the president of the association, Will Hayes, was afraid that the federal government would be vexed when they found out about this change. So the very next day, or not the next day, but November 1st, 1939, the association, Peter, you're not going to believe this, changed its bylaws to amend that the word damn could be used if it was part of a literary quotation, which it was because it came from Mitchell's novel.
Wow.
That's the story of Selznick fighting to get the word damn in Gone with the Wind.
Amazing. Wow.
If only they knew what they were saying now.
Yes, and a postscript. In 2005, the American Film Institute issued a ranking of the 100 years of movie quotes, and Gable's line was ranked number 1.
Wow.
Can't do better than that.
That's right.
Pauline, I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's been an absolute joy sitting and chat. We could chat for hours. We're going to have to do another one of these about Gone with the Wind. Hopefully there's going to be another book.
I would love to do it. I've got another book in mind, but it's still in its formative stages, so I don't really want to reveal anything. But I thank you, and I thank DJ for all of your courtesy shown to me. I appreciate it.
So be sure and get yourself Gone with the Wind, 1939, Day by Day. This is a great book. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it at Barnes & Noble, like I got mine at my local Barnes & Noble. And if you contact Pauline, she will send you an autograph plate, correct?
And Pauline, do you have a website?
Just go to my Amazon.com author page.
So it's all there. And again, this movie is going to live on forever and ever. It's celebrating its 83rd anniversary. The book just celebrated its 86th anniversary, and if you've never seen it, you're missing out. It's just a true piece of film history. As I said earlier, iconoclastic.
Yes.
Just one of the all-time greats. One of the all-time greats. So, also, guys, I know a few of my Judy fans have tuned in. I hope you come and catch Judy on September 10th at Chelsea Table and Stage over on 26th Street. We'll be doing Judy and the Songs That Got Away. You know, it's Judy Garland's centennial year. She would have been 100 on June 10th. So you can come and catch our thematic show, Judy and the Songs That Got Away, where you not only get to hear her signature tunes, but you also get to hear songs that she never sang, songs that were written both during and after her lifetime, that we find have the true Garland style. So that's going to be our show on Saturday, September 10th at Chelsea Table and Stage, and you can visit thejudygarlandshow.com, as well as Mac and Chat on Facebook. This video will be on YouTube tomorrow afternoon. So for those of you who missed the whole thing, you can go back, share your good comments on the video. That would be wonderful on YouTube. And I thank you so much. I hope that everybody is having a wonderful summer as we're about to approach fall. And again, as I made a promise, tonight's show is dedicated to our dear friend, Galen English. I hope you are watching. Good night, everyone.
I don't just hate you, coward. You're afraid to marry me. You'd rather live with that silly little fool who can't open her mouth except say yes, no, and raise a parcel of mealy-mouthed brats just like her.
You mustn't say things like that about Malin.
Who are you to tell me I mustn't? You led me on. You made me believe you wanted to marry me.
Now, Scarlett, be fair. I never at any time...
You did. It's true you did. I hate you till I die. I can't think of anything bad enough